You have to unmute, yeah.
So everybody's on mute except for Nigel and me. And gosh, keeping our head in this situation is quite a test, isn't it? So, dearest everybody, the reason I'm so thrilled and amazed that you're all here is because in my country, Britain, there is a heat wave, which is like Africa. And so I just could not imagine that anybody wanted to come and sit in front of a computer and listen to stories about art. But the fact that you are there is wonderful. And the fact that people are there from in other places in the world is also wonderful. Thank you. So I think last week, Peter was also talking about German Expressionism. And I've chosen in context with Peter to speak about one artist called Max Beckmann. And the thing that is so incredibly important about Max Beckmann is that it's, you know, there is this special curse where they say, I hope you will live an interesting life. I think that the Chinese say it, and it's kind of like a bad thing to live an interesting life. Well, Max Beckmann lived an interesting life. He lived through the First World War and the Second World War, and he lived through it with the deepest sensitivity of an artist. And what he did with that experience is quite incredible, and we're going to see that today. So this is the beautiful Max Beckmann as a young man. It's 1907. He's just won a huge prize where he's been sent off to Florence with his beautiful young wife. They met at art school. She was a singer, and they've gone to live in Florence. He's got a special stipend, and there he stands, elegant and beautiful and light-hearted and hopeful. And into his life comes the First World War. And what happened when the First World War came into his life, this man who was painting like an expressionist, really like everyone else, not really authentic, I mean, obviously very capable, but not sort of stirring work, experiences the First World War. So look at this portrait, and now look at this next one. We should move on, Nigel. So this is what happened to Max Beckmann. He wasn't called up. He volunteered to enter the war as a medical orderly. And you can still see the sort of remnants of that impressionist style. But if you just look around the eyes and the nose, things are getting much more clear. But he went into this war as a medical orderly and started off in Prussia and then went on to the front in Belgium. And he describes this war. We have a wonderful poet, Wilfred Owen, who talks about this multitudinous flesh, this treading blood from lungs that once loved laughter, this horror, this unbelievable slaughter of this war. And he was a medical orderly, and he's picking the people, well, the bits of people up and taking them to the hospital, bandaging them, helping them. And he describes the scene on the front with a huge fat surgeon who almost looks like a cook, and people with vast moustaches binding up bloody stumps, and incredible kind of sort of danger and fear and horror, and everybody just sort of busily trying to save people's lives. And he said he had an extraordinary experience with this. He said that his life up until then had been a sort of vast boredom and this kind of this corrupt society with no real values. And suddenly he gets thrown into this absolutely monstrous place. And he says it was like it made him come alive. And into this vast darkness he stared. And behind the darkness, he saw eternity. And all the time he was drawing, he said, I draw to stay alive. And he always described how he felt that it was really important to acknowledge the chaos and the darkness of life, and that each of us has a way of bringing it into form. And it must be an entirely personal and authentic and individual way. And by bringing it into form, we give this chaos meaning. So Max Beckmann experienced that. This is 1915, where he has this most terrible breakdown. He goes and lives with his friend in Frankfurt, and this is his first attempt to paint himself after the war, after his freedom from the war. It's not yet the end of the war, and he's trying desperately to understand himself, to bring into his consciousness what happened to him. And then he begins to make this work, which he makes in the 20s. So what has happened is there's been this terrible war. At the end of the war, there was this hope that there would be a renewal. So he said the only thing that could make this war bearable would be if it was a cleansing, and that people then came together in a kind of revolution and a new way of thinking and making the world. And instead of that, he experienced that people fled to communism or to the suburbs or to kind of Eastern philosophies, or just nobody would dare to face reality. And so he decided that he was going to paint reality. And so we're in for a rocky ride, everybody. Hold on to your hats. Next picture. So this painting is a scene. If you look at it carefully, you can see there's a table where the family have been sitting eating a meal, and they've been invaded by 3 cutthroats. And my darling aunt from Czechoslovakia pointed out to me that the man on the right with a cap actually looks like Lenin. But these men have invaded this house, and they're taking the father of the house and they're stringing him up, and his body is contorted in such a way that he almost looks like Christ. His hand is held out in a supplication like Christ, and he's being hung with this spotted cloth. And this is to do with how Beckmann experienced life as carnival, as theater. So into this theater of life is this monstrous struggle going on in the world. So the man is being hung by one of the thugs, the other one is holding his arm, and the one on the furthest right of the picture has got his arm around the little girl as if he's going to fling her out of the window. The mother has been tied up, and she's had her body splayed as if she's being ready to be raped. And you can see the dog is hidden under the table. One of the candles has fallen down. And the important thing about Beckmann's work at this time, so he's experiencing society just after the war, no money, no food, no hope, a kind of awful, utter and complete chaos, and people just walking around in a sort of fog of pain and loss and despair. And so he tries to paint the spaces in which people are living are completely claustrophobic, and the window, which is open, it opens out onto you can see the slight shine of the moon, but it is a dark and terrifying unknown. So he's really in despair about the fate of the human being. We should go on to the next one. And this painting is called The Bath. And you can really see his depiction of suffering. There is once again a really claustrophobic room where there's no windows. If you think of the pictures of a bath that you normally see, you see beautiful, soft, white, voluptuous women with golden hair, and everything is relaxing and beautiful. And he's created this image of the bath, and there's a young girl swinging, and just below her is an old lady unclothed, so you don't see the beautiful, soft, sensuous girl. You see the old woman, and the water is a kind of bloody red. There's a woman on the right holding a baby who's grizzling, and a little girl, so a little baby is crawling towards her, but the baby is red as if the baby is scalded. And he's describing this kind of world where there is no rhyme or reason. There is just a chaos and a madness. And if you look carefully at the eye line of the people, everybody is not looking at someone. So they're all together in this bath, but the old lady is looking away in one direction. The woman holding the baby is not looking at the baby, they're looking over him. The little baby that is crawling to the little girl, she has this kind of blank face, she's not really engaging. So there's no communication, there's no connecting, there's just this macabre, strange, mad dance. And that's how he experienced society at the time. Should go on. So Beckmann is desperately trying to find a way forward into some kind of positivity. Interestingly, all his life, he had a successful career. He was a man who always had a dealer. He was supported in his work. He had people around him who really believed in him. And here you see Beckmann trying to get some sort of glimmer of joy and positivity. So you imagine that a man sitting in a bar, dressed in his tuxedo, drinking champagne, you would imagine that there would be some kind of happiness there. But instead, what you see is a man who seems to be pushed by the bar against the chair. So he seems to be imprisoned and constrained. He's holding champagne, but his hand holding the cigar doesn't have the sort of laissez-faire feeling of here we are in a realm of plenitude. It's kind of contorted, and he's staring out at you with a kind of grimacing, mad smile. And behind him is the kind of terrible, terrible nouveau riche profiteer, sort of enjoying and making hay out of this terrible situation. So in the self-portrait, he describes the state of his own soul. Should go on. Now this picture is probably one of his most important pictures. Can I just check, are people watching this? Are the pictures very, very small? Or is it just mine that's small? Okay, so you can see properly. So this is a very important painting. It's called, oh, sorry, I'm gonna have to just look. It's just called The Dream. And the most important figure in the painting is the little girl. She's sitting holding a little Punch and Judy doll, and the Punch and Judy doll is actually clapping sardonically at the people around her. But she actually has a sweet innocence, naivety, and she's sitting there on a trunk, and we know it's Berlin, and we know she's come from somewhere. But if you notice, the thing that you have to really see with Beckmann's pictures is how he describes space is very important, because this is a room in which whatever anybody is doing, it can't work. So there's a man and he's climbing up a ladder. He's got no hands and he's trying to get up the ladder. He's holding a fish, and at the top of the ladder, it's closed. There's nothing to get out of. And next to him is a blind man. If you go down to the left from him, there's a blind man playing music and blowing his little horn, and he's trying to collect money in a place where there is no one to collect money for. He's not on a street, he's imprisoned in a room. And down on if you move round the picture to the woman at the far right-hand corner, she is playing a cello which has no strings. It cannot be played. And above her is somebody who's crawling forward on his broken, maimed legs, but he's actually got nowhere to go. And what he was saying in this picture is that everything that everybody's doing at that time is hopeless. There was nowhere to go. There were no solutions. There was no clarity of purpose. Everybody is like in an insane asylum, just acting out these strange movements which have got nothing to do with purpose or direction. And the little girl is sitting there in need of some kind of competence around her, and we're asking ourselves, can she survive? Can the future survive? Can we get through this? Is there any hope? So we should go on. Now, this is a painting that Max Beckmann has painted of his family, and they're gathering together to go to a ball, a masquerade ball. And the painting has many of the most important themes of Beckmann's work. So Beckmann is desperately searching for meaning and eternity. He's surrounded by this chaotic world, and he's surrounded by people really not living up to his high expectations that they would be active and think and do something for themselves. And he's sitting there in the center. He's masked, but he's the only one who's looking out at you with a bright, shiny intention. So he's clear, he's got a purpose. And then around him are different members of his family. And behind the woman playing the music, that's his wife, Mina, and his little boy, Peter. There is a sort of aperture with a curtain around it. And once again, there's this darkness, this unknown space behind the curtain, and the curtains of his other relations sitting by the window, where there are openings into the dark, dark unknown. And if you notice how the painting is made, it's as if the room has been pushed by an earthquake. Everything is out of kilter. Nothing is straight and normal. And he, sitting there with his family, is asking himself, how do we live? How do we go forward? And what can be done as an artist to help this world forward? Should go on. So Max Beckmann had a wife. She's called Mina. This is a picture of her. So him and Mina married at art school, and she accompanied him all through this time. And then they, in 1924, they actually amicably divorced. She was a musician. She started off painting like him, but then she became a musician. And they amicably divorced, and he paints this picture of her, this sort of farewell picture, a picture of love. But you see these themes again. So Mina is sitting there. She's soft and beautiful, and she's a lovely woman. She's holding a fan in her hand. And if you look at the glass behind her, there's a mirror, and that fan is kind of mirrored by the curtain, like a theater. And behind the curtain is once again the great dark unknown. So he loves Mina, and he's saying goodbye to her, and she's going back to the theater of her life. It's, you know, she worked in the theater, but he also has this idea of the theater of life. Should go on. So I'm trying to tell you something about Beckmann's ideas so that these pictures have a bit more clarity for you. So Beckmann was faced with this awakening war. He saw this war as an awakening in him, and he went back to the world intending to do something different for the world, and he hoped that there would be a huge community of people willing to do this. I mean, I remember a very beloved teacher of mine in Botten. She told me that she had that same experience after the Second World War, that there was this hope that there would be a new world and people would try in a different way. And what Beckmann is experiencing is that he goes back to the world and everything just goes back not only does it not become new, it actually goes back to the old values where nothing is discovered. And what is so terrible for him about that is that if you lose so much in order to bring birth to the new, you can bear it. But if you lose so much to achieve nothing, and if anything, to get worse, then what one suffers in is the most ghastly, ghastly despair. And Beckmann was at this time, he was successful, he was exhibiting in Paris, he was invited to exhibit in the Venice Biennale, and he meets his second wife, Kwapi. So Kwapi is 20 years younger than him. She says she was an angel sent to him, and he paints her now. They're dressed up to go to the carnival. But if you look at him, you look at his expression, it's mask-like. He's holding his hands in a sort of still, steady way, and Kwapi is behind him, and she has a carnival horse with her, so that she becomes both horse and woman. And for him, Kwapi was protecting him. She's standing in front of the darkness. There's the curtain again, and behind the curtain is this awful darkness, and Kwapi's standing in front of it, and she's guarding him, and she is actually animated, and she's full of life, and she's part horse, part woman. And for him, this was somebody who was able to really grasp the earth, to grasp the unconscious, to grasp the intuitive, and she is guiding and helping him. So in this sense, she is the person who he's come to train himself with, who is helping him through these dark times, and he was to stay married to her for the rest of his life. We should go on. Can go on, Nigel. Now the thing that is very important about this one before is they basically celebrate a moment in Beckmann's life where everything changed. So he was finally given the most amazing job as head of a great art institute in Frankfurt. And he was in love, and he was beginning to come through the depression into some kind of hope, and he paints himself in this way. So there is Max Beckmann dressed up. Now, if you think that with that staring with a calm smile, now look at a man who, on the left of the picture, you see the curtain, and it doesn't have behind a terrible darkness. It actually has a sort of shining, brilliant.
Deborah, we can't hear you. Your voice is breaking up too much.
And he himself is dressed exquisitely in a tuxedo, and so I should carry on. So, so he's standing there in this exquisite tuxedo, and this is just absolutely thrilling because it's just such a beautiful picture of Max Beckmann's philosophy. So Max Beckmann was a kind of aristocratic Bolshevik. He wanted to lift everyone up the aristocracy. So he said, in the future, can I do anything?
Deborah, I don't know if it's the same for
I'm
everybody.
so sorry.
But
I think Nigel has said if you all turn off your video,
yeah, if they stop their videos, that
it
would
might
help
help with the
bandwidth.
it's the internet. The internet is dodgy.
Yeah.
So if you turn off your video,
Yeah.
you might. What? Should I speak?
Deborah,
Shall I just carry on?
yeah, but Deborah, it would
So,
probably Deborah,
Max philosophy that everybody
Deborah,
must be lifted to the level of the aristocrat. And so although he cares about the people, he doesn't have this idea of the upper classes sort of changing the lower classes to become, he wants everybody, defines the aristocrat in a very, that would be the person who had dared to, who had a sense of purpose in his culture to become. Yes. So first video. Can you hear me, Miss Nigel? I'm right. I'm just going to keep talking. So I don't know when we.
do you want me to go on?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can't really hear. We can't really hear you. No. It's better now you've switched your video off, but we're still breaking up quite a lot. And I certainly haven't heard you ask to change the slides.
No, it's okay. So shall I just go on or what?
Right, I don't know what else we can do. You've turned off your video. Everybody else has turned off their video. I can turn off mine as well. Actually, that's not so easy to
No,
do.
but I really need to communicate with you. I need to communicate with you, Nigel. Don't turn it off.
Yeah, but
So
no,
listen, Nigel, when I want you to change a slide, I'll go like this. Can you see me? No. Okay, I'll tell you when to change a slide. So I'm going to talk about this picture. Okay, so Max Beckmann is painting in this picture him coming through a dark time, finding love, being given proper really recognition as an art teacher in Frankfurt, and painting himself as the new aristocrat. He wants it to be possible for everybody to become an aristocrat. And for an aristocrat, what he means is, this is why he's dressed in these amazing clothes. An aristocrat is a person who has dared to become a self, who has dared to become free and self-responsible, who's dared to connect with the greater values in the world, the eternity of the white light you see behind him. And so this is what he's saying is the future. This is what he longs for. He says it's utopian, but this is what he believes. And he says you must start somewhere. You should move now, Michael. Nigel, a new picture.
Can you see it?
So, yes, yes. And can you hear?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. So this is what happened to Max Beckmann. He came to that place of sort of coming through a very dark time, being able to describe his vision and really prepare for the next phase of his work. And then he began to paint in triptychs. Now, the reason he chose the triptych was because it had a religious connotation. It was used in medieval art as a form of teaching. And he wanted to be, he felt that the artist was a kind of leader whose job it was to show people reality and truth and to help them to wake up and become themselves. And just as he's beginning to make this work, Hitler has got into power. The painting is called The Departure, and it is devastating. He uses on the left-hand side and the right-hand side these images of terrible struggle. The left-hand side, there is torture. You see a woman leaning over, ready to be struck by somebody who's holding what looks like an axe, but is actually a net full of fishes. Just above the net, there's a man standing up with his hands cut off and bound, and there's a man who has no feet, who's got his back to you. This is the sort of terrible struggle that's going on in the process of overcoming evil. And on the right-hand side, he describes this woman who has a man strapped to her. So she is the one with power, and she has bound the man around her. Behind her is a blind man. And he says about this image, this is what it's like in life. You carry bound to you all your mistakes, all your murders, all the terrible things you have. You must carry them around. The struggle, the suffering, you walk all through your life, carrying that with you. But you can come to this point where you see in the middle, where you can break through to meaning. And so you have the image of a king and a kind of warrior to the left of the king, and in front of the warrior there is a woman holding a beautiful child, and they are leaving this darkness, and they're sailing out into the deepest eternal sea. And there is this experience of incredible hope. And although this was painted at this darkest time in German history, he says, it's not a literal description of how I felt about Hitler's Germany. It's a description of something which would be relevant for any time. Should go on. You can go on, Nigel. Oh, sorry, you are.
I have. It just takes time.
No, sorry, I'm worried about you not hearing me. Can I just check, do you think anybody's hearing us all over the world, or there's nothing we can do to find out? I just have to keep going and hoping they are.
Yes, we're all hearing you. Thank you. You're doing very well under difficult circumstances.
Okay. I'm so glad you can hear, because otherwise, poor you. Anyway, so what is happening to him at this time is he's really facing up to what's going on in his soul, how he wants to change and grow. And the thing about Beckmann is that he's interested in the Kabbalah, in Gnosticism, in the ideas of Schopenhauer or in Nietzsche. He knows about theosophy. He is very interested in spiritual experiences. He describes how he had a personal relationship with the French painter Rousseau, who always encouraged him and told him not to panic. And he said that he also had a meeting with William Blake, who would quote Hamlet to him. So he's a man with many different layers of soul experience. And one of the things that he's experiencing is how to find the right attitude to being a painter. So if you look at the two sides of this triptych, they are both images of women who have been associated with lust. So on the left-hand side is a woman holding a spear. She's actually tied to a spear. And behind her is a dark Moor who's the boatman. And in front of her is a figure dressed in armor who's actually a woman. So that's Pallas Athene. So this is Pallas Athene, and she's actually she's actually killed a kind of image of lust. And in front of her is Helen, and she's holding the sword to sort of say, in order to do your destiny, you cannot be sidetracked by these lustful feelings. And on the right, you see the woman who is the Queen of Sheba, and she's in a cage. And beside her is a bird. The Queen of Sheba had a magic bird. And every day it would fly around the whole world and then come and tell her. But here the magic bird has been turned into a prison guard. And in front of her is a kind of bellhop. And he's carrying a crown. And he's got a debased woman who he's walking, you know, he's debasing and humiliating her as she walks. And it's quite important to just say something about Max Beckmann's imagery. So, you know, when you look at a medieval painting, you can actually read the imagery. There are laws, the way Christ is painted, the way his hair is parted, what he's holding, flowers are there. Every single one of the things in a medieval painting can be read. If you look at a Max Beckmann painting, you can't do that. It is literally the pageant of his life. So he's this incredibly educated person. He's connected with the imagery of Christianity, of antiquity, of all kinds of things that are going around at the time, the Kabbalah, Gnosticism, Theosophy, everything. He's reading Baudelaire, he's reading Schopenhauer, and the way he thought about these people is like an enormous compost heap in his soul. And then he's looking at the world and he's saying, in front of me is this terrible chaos called life. And his son said about him, he said, when I tried to explain to my father that you could explain all this chaos with science, his father got very upset and he said, don't do that. Don't try and explain chaos with science. Bear the chaos. Use your gifts of making form to give it meaning. Bring together its paradoxes by your capacity to form and to make exactly your form. And he doesn't want everybody to be sorted out by saying, oh, well, a rainbow is like this, science says. Let a rainbow be all the millions of things it can be. Let it be a sign from God. Let it be the moment when the person wakes up after their divorce and looks out of the window and says, oh, there's a rainbow. It's there for me. Or when somebody's dying and there's a rainbow when they're buried. Allow everything to have this chaos and magic in it and give it its form by your experience and relationship to it. And he has this amazing capacity to draw, to paint. He uses color, he uses line, he uses form, and he creates these spaces. If you see the two sides on either side of him, they're outside. So they're both on water, but they're both images of great struggle and also imprisonment. And it's this question, what do you want? Love, money, gold, power? There's the man is holding the crown, the little bellhop. And some people have said about this bellhop that if you look at the way he is with his hair and the fact that he's holding this woman in this terrible abject way, that he's actually a kind of a slight mentioning of Hitler. Now, the thing is, you can't just paint what you feel at that time. So he could have been mentioning Hitler. He could have been mentioning the sort of hubris of Nazism. He could have been mentioning the treatment of the Jews. And what he actually invites you to do with his pictures, he says, I don't mind what you see in them. I had these experiences and I gave them form with my work. It stopped me dying. The only place I felt at home was here in my soul, where I could make form. And you are invited to think what you think. And sometimes you can find out what he thinks because he mentions it. But the middle image is the picture of the artist. And you see the artist actually has written beside him, there on those papers written beside him are the first lines of the Gospel of St. John. And on the left is the word Saturn. And he is also tied, his arms are tied and his feet are tied. And he's looking into the mirror, trying to reflect the truth of life. And in front of him is the beautiful muse, who he is allowed to know, but he's never allowed to get too close to. That's why he's fettered. And beside her is a dark woman with many breasts. This is Diana of Ephesus, the fertility god. And you can see the pillar to the left is beginning to fall. Everything is falling. And the artist is trying to overcome all these things which get in the way of the human being becoming free and making meaning of their life. Should go on. So now the bad times come. So this painting is made in 1937. So if you think of the portraits we've seen of Beckmann, if you look at his portraits, you basically see his biography. The beautiful young man in Florence, the broken man from the First World War, the desperately trying to seek happiness man in the bar, the radiant man who's come to some kind of equanimity and sense of purpose and clarity. And now in 1937, this is the portrait he paints of himself. And if you look at the portrait, it literally looks like a paper cutout. The hands are just hanging there. The body is flat. The stairs and the banisters are painted in such a way that he's being tipped to the side. Behind him is just a chaos of color and marks. And this is Beckmann in 1937. So in 1937 in Germany, there was the great exhibition of degenerate art. Beckmann had 600 of his paintings taken from the galleries. He lost his job. He was facing again the horror of what he was doing. And the man in the tuxedo, the aristocrat that he's asking us all to be a free person who can stand in the world and make the future, is literally being tipped out of the picture. There's no space, there's no form, there's no weight. There's just this cardboard cutout. Nothing. Should go on. So when Beckmann had that experience in Germany, he fled to Amsterdam. And it's really interesting because this is 1937, 1938. He gets out of Germany and he goes to live in Amsterdam. And his intention, I think, is to move to America. But he ends up staying for the whole of the war in Amsterdam because it comes on too quickly. But while he's in Amsterdam, he paints this picture and it's called The Liberated. But it's so interesting what he means by liberated. He still has fetters around his wrists. He's holding the chains, but he's been released from the chains behind him. But the windows are still like bars, and there is this glowering light to the right of his face, as if there's a fire, and there's a look of sort of unbearable sadness. He's liberated, but it is an unbearable state of affairs. And what I discovered, to my amazement, so little one knows, it's really incredible. In Britain, in the English artists, especially a wonderful man called Herbert Reed, who you might know because he opened a wonderful gallery in Cambridge called Kettle's Yard. And they had an exhibition of all the art that had been put in all the artists who had been put in the Degenerate Artist exhibition. So while he's painting this picture and feeling like this person who's liberated but is still in prison, he's exiled from his country. From this moment, Max Beckmann never went back to Germany. So he's liberated, but he's exiled. And in Britain, they had this massive exhibition in London. And it's very interesting because when I was a young person, you never find out anything about these artists in England. It was like they didn't exist. And only because I knew old German anthroposophists who'd fled the war did I ever find out anything about them or get any pictures or see what they were doing. And that was because when this exhibition was mounted in London, there was still such a prejudice about the Germans because of the First World War. And there was also a particular art critic called Roger Fry, who couldn't bear this art. He found it too much, and he had an enormous influence. And actually, for years and years and years, British people were kind of taught to not like this art, to consider it to be crude and unnecessarily violent. And what is so interesting about it is it's called expressionism, the painting, because it is expressing our feelings. And Alice Miller wrote a wonderful essay about why Hitler did this art. And she said that if you are cut off from your heart and you refuse to feel empathy, when you look at these paintings, you are unable to keep your heart cut off, and it breaks down the boundaries and makes you feel. And Hitler literally loathed this art. He hated it with an undying passion. And when you went to the exhibition of degenerate art, there were awful slogans put beside the art, and they would put the art of the so-called mad next to the things so that you could see that actually all this art was made by so-called mad people. And there was even this statement where the curator said, if I could, I would tie every artist to the wall by their paintings so that we could spit on them. But it's very interesting, despite that the curator got very worried. In fact, the whole of everybody concerned with the exhibition got worried because so many people came and they really didn't look as if they were hating it. They were sort of silently and not telling anybody, loving it, because it is too truly amazing to just reject like that. It has its own power. But this is Max Beckmann, exiled, liberated, still in chains, actually came to the exhibition in London and spoke, and came back to Amsterdam expecting to be able to go to America. Should go on. Now, I almost feel too frightened to show you this painting. The thing you have to understand about Max Beckmann is, I'm just going to find some beautiful way of describing it. You know, when people talk rape, they say rape is not about sex, it's about power. And Max Beckmann describes torture as desire taken to the point of extinction. And when he's painting these monstrous subjects and confronting the darkness of the times and the darkness of the ideas of the times, he's not doing it in a kind of, he's not looking at it lasciviously or something. He's showing you this in order to be on the side of humanity and say, we simply cannot be silent in the face of this darkness. And this is probably the only painting where Beckmann actually overtly challenges Nazism. So he's in Germany, Holland. He paints this painting, which is called, oh dear, sorry, it's called Bird Hell. And if you look on the right-hand corner, there is a person lashed to a bench, and they're being slashed by this evil, mad bird. And behind him, there is a woman hatching from an egg, and she is Diana of Ephesus, but she has been turned into a fury. And this is a sort of reference to the sort of destruction of the beautiful myths and using them for the idea of blood and soil. And behind her, you see a little group of women, naked white women, cowering in terror. And behind these circles, these yellow circles behind, are described as possibly the idea of the gramophone, because the constant propaganda that the Nazis used to sort of brainwash everybody, but they are also a kind of maybe a suggestion of the ovens. And once again, another dark bird sort of committing unspeakable horror on the people around her. And then in the middle, you see an eagle. So this is the eagle that the Nazis used, and the eagle is standing over the golden coins. And beside is another mad, crazy bird. And behind him, the bird, is a kind of ghastly crowd of naked people, all with their arms up in the sort of Nazi salute, waiting to be executed. And in front, you see this tiny still life with a candle, and behind the candle is a seascape with a sunrise, and the fruits to the left as some kind of desperate attempt to hold on to. We will come through this, we will redeem this, but this is hell. This is what human beings who are given rein to their darkest desires create, this hell. Should go on. Sorry, I just need to take my breath. So he's now painting, he's famously painted 10 great triptychs, and they were mostly painted during this dark period. And this one is called Perseus. Oh, sorry, no, it's not. It's called The Acrobats. The imagery is so dense. I try very hard to study them enough that I don't need to look at notes, but I don't always manage. So this is called The Acrobats. And the central figure is a man who is a snake charmer. He's holding a ball, and beside him is a naked woman who seems to be looking at the idea that this could actually be Adam and Eve in a perverted form. But in the circus, the middle panel is about behind the circus, the dressing rooms, and there is the Adam and Eve story, and to the left of the naked woman is a man, a weak, foolish man. He's holding a globe, and he's got a crown on his head. And when you look at the circus in terms of these artists, what you look at is the circle of life. Within this circle of life, life happens. And on either side of him, to the left, there is an acrobat high up. And below the acrobat, two people making love. And the bottom woman is like the madam calling people in. And on the right-hand side, there is a little vendor taking tickets to invite people in. And there is a man dressed in the garb of the god of war, of Mars. So he's externalizing his thoughts with his own imagery. And he really does invite you to figure out what you think and what you see. And he says that in a way, the only people who could ever understand his paintings are the people who are tuned in to his own form and way of making images. I should go on. So if you think of the last portraits that we've seen, they have this picture of falling apart, of sorrow, of grief, of if there are windows, they appear like blinds in bars. And there's a kind of heavy melancholia. And now this portrait is painted in 1941. So we're well into the war. I can't quite remember when the camp started, but I think it was sort of 41, 42. So here is Max Beckmann, and he's dressed very informally. He's in his dressing gown, and there are no bars on the window. There are Venetian blinds. It's ordinary daylight. It's an ordinary artist studio. And he's coming to some kind of equanimity out of this war. And he's saying, you as an artist, he's making this sculpture. He says, you as an artist, and you are all artists out there, you must beget yourself. So the sculpture is a way of saying, let us make ourselves. So in the face of all the darkness, he has come to some kind of equanimity, and he's making form. And while he was in Amsterdam, the Nazis had overcome Holland. He's a German citizen. He's on their lists. He often has to, well, twice he gets called up to be checked to see whether he can go into the army as a soldier. Fortunately, he can't. And he often gets visited by his son, who is a member of he's a medic in the German army, Nazi army, and he comes to see him and helps him smuggle pictures to safety. So he's got all this kind of underground stuff going on. And he is a German citizen, but he's a rebellious German citizen, yet he is somehow left in peace, and he makes his work and he finds a way to go on. Next one. So so the reason I put this painting here is because this is a painting of Perseus. And you know, in Greek mythology, the story of Perseus is rather wonderful. In fact, I remember, if I'm right, please correct me if I'm wrong, I remember the first time I read a Greek myth. It was about Perseus. And Perseus meets Pallas Athene on the shore, where he is weeping because he's lost everything. And he gets really helped by Pallas Athene to go out into the world and do great things. And in the end, he saves Andromeda from the rock to which she's chained. So Perseus is a hero. And what has happened here is he has turned Perseus into a monster. For his mad, you know, he's got this dark, ugly face. There's something brutal about his body. He's got this matted red hair. He's holding a sword, and he's not saving Andromeda. He's subduing and hurting her. And she's actually become one with the sea serpent who he's supposedly saving her from. He's sort of destroying them both. And what he painted this painting for was he has to do everything in code. So in Germany, Nordic mythology is being utterly corrupted and turned into this dark force with which to support Nazi mythology. And so he kind of makes a statement about that by taking Greek mythology and turning it into something dark and saying, this is what's happening in the world in my country, but I can't actually say that. So I'm going to do it with Greek mythology so that you can see that I'm saying it is possible to take these great myths and turn them to the dark. Should we go on? So in this painting, gosh, the complexity of this painting. If you look at it carefully, look first at the middle one, the middle tableau, and you can see that it's actually a stage. And the main figure on the stage is the king, and underneath the stage, you can see there is a huge fight going on. And there's a little girl connecting the stage and the underneath of the stage who's sort of blissfully unaware. And if you go right, you can see underneath the stage of that tableau and underneath the stage of the first tableau, And if you look at the first tableau, underneath the stage is a whole bunch of feet with chains on them. And then above, there's actually the left. So this left-hand tableau, this is Christ. So Christ is steadily moving towards his destiny with calm equanimity. And on the right, you see the Janus figure, a figure from antiquity. So he's got Christianity on the left and antiquity on the right. And they are standing on either side of the actor king. So the actor king is standing in the middle there, and he's killing himself. And in the process of killing himself, the woman's voice becomes voiceless. She stops singing. The person who's the producer behind him is sort of quiet and not quite knowing what to do. On the left-hand side is the person who's helping to prompt everybody with her hands up, not knowing what to do. And what Beckmann says about this picture is, he says, I am killing myself, but I'm not afraid of this death. This is a death towards a renewal. And on either side of the renewal is all the mythology of Christ and of antiquity. So Beckmann is a person who has taken everything in, and he's using everything at the same time and being supported by everything. Should go on. Now, this is the most hilarious and wonderful painting. So we can see that things are getting better. So when is this painting? So this is painted in 1946. The war is over. So it's called Beginnings. I'm just wondering if we just need a little breath, not to talk about pictures, just have a little breath. And I'll just tell you something about Beckmann when he was a little boy. I think I've said before in my talks that there is this great artist, Anselm Kiefer, who says that actually all you need is a childhood to make a body of work. And he says that often if you have one really serious memory of yourself as a child, you can already see your vocation. And I've actually tried to find that out. My dear friends will tell me, and I look at my own life, but you can really see this with Beckmann's life, because Beckmann was born into a middle-class family, and he was the youngest child with a big gap between his two elder siblings. And his earliest memory is of painting a painting about a story which he heard. And this is a story where somebody asks, a king, I think, asks a shepherd, what is eternity? And the shepherd says there is a huge diamond mountain, vast diamond mountain, and every year, 100 years, a little bird comes and sharpens its beak on the diamond mountain. And only when and he says, that is 1 second of eternity. And only when the whole mountain has been smoothed and sharpened by the bird will we understand the whole of eternity. And he painted that picture when he was a little boy. So all his life, he's having this experience of looking for eternity. He sees it in the war, when in the terrible darkness breaks through and sees beyond this terrible monstrous war into a realm of unbelievable possibilities. He describes it when he sees the sea, that for him the sea is the great image of eternity. And he describes it when he sees in these dark, dark times when everything is without hope. So he goes through this period where eternity becomes this terrible, dark unknown, not something to be looked for. Now, this is a painting actually of Beckmann's childhood. So if you look at the first picture, you see the paintings are different. They're not stuck together. He's painted 3 paintings, and the ones on either side are smaller, and he's made them begin at the top with the line in the middle. So he's got the that eye line in the first painting, just where the big chair is, and then the ones on the side are lining up with that line, and they're all different aspects of his childhood. So this story began with a dream. He had a horrible, frightening dream about Puss in Boots, and he sort of lived with the dream, and at first it was very unpleasant, and then it resulted in this picture. So in the first picture is Max Beckmann on this rocking horse. In front of him is a toy, which is a Pierrot. And on the left are his mother and father coming into the attic. So his bedroom is in the attic, and his parents are trotting up, trying to see what Beckmann's doing in the attic. And he's managed to slay the fierce Puss in Boots, who's hanging from the rafters. And below Puss in Boots, you can see the little rats. And then there's a woman, and she's blowing bubbles, and she's kind of the erotic energy of women. And then behind is an older, wise imagery of what women, how women give us not only love and all that marvelous muse-like creativity, but also wisdom, and that comes out of age. And he is on the horse, and he is riding out into the future. And on the right is a hilarious picture of Max Beckmann at school. So he's in his classroom, and go right down to the right-hand corner. And in the right-hand corner, there is a sort of harp, and Max Beckmann's arm, he's a little child, and his arm is resting against the harp, and it's holding a picture of a naked woman. And the bars of the classroom are open, and the children are all looking at Max Beckmann, standing near to this image of art with the musical instrument and his little picture of a woman. And in front of him is a strict and constrictive teacher, somebody who's limiting, who's cruel. And on the left-hand side of this cruel teacher, there is a boy standing with his hands up as a punishment. But behind the teacher is the wonderful image from antiquity, and an image of the mountains, and in front of the teacher, a beautiful picture of the globe. So he's in this imprisoned situation as a child, but he's going out of the door holding art with the whole of the world in the globe, and with the wonderful mountains. So it's getting free from the constrictions of childhood. And on the left-hand side is Max Beckmann is dressed as a little prince, and beside him is a beautiful maiden, and she is her head is covered in flowers, and she's looking in a mirror. And Max Beckmann is looking out of the window straight into the eyes of a beautiful dark-haired angel. And behind her are more angels who've come down. And there is this man who's playing the, what is that called? When you yes. This music. There's a man who wanders the streets playing this instrument, and he's often seen as a kind of powerful figure of how you're imprisoned in your fate. But Max Beckmann is looking straight past him at the inspiring woman and the angels around him, and he will not be imprisoned by his fate. Mm-hmm. So it's a wonderful picture of
hurdy-gurdy.
Thank you, guys. Word loss. Anyway, isn't that just gorgeous that the war is over? It's 1946, I think, and he's painted this picture. He started this picture in Amsterdam and actually finished it in America. We should go on. So the very quick to say about this picture is this is called Jason and the Argonauts. And the only thing I'm going to say about it is this and the picture before are his images of youth and going back out into the world. So after this terrible war and this life of unbelievable struggle and suffering, you see once again, I'm going to talk about the middle image. So the middle image is Jason and the Argonauts standing there with the magical bird. And in front of them is the great king, is Poseidon, and behind the sun and the moon and the stars. And Poseidon is not angry. He's not going to stop them. He's actually providing them with a way to go out into the future. The last great paintings he painted towards the end of his life were these paintings of youth, of hope, of going out into the future. Should go on. So, darling Max Beckmann, he gets to America. I think he gets to America in 47. And he's treated wonderfully. He's loved by everyone. He's got a gallerist. He's given hundreds of teaching jobs. He's got his beloved Kwapi with him. Can't speak much English, so every lecture he gives, Kwapi is beside him translating. He's loved. He's taken seriously. He's given awards and honors. And he works with Louis. And the funny thing is that if you want to see the best collection of Beckmann paintings in the world, you go to St. Louis in America, because there was a collector there who collected him and then gave it to the city. And I just want you to notice this picture because it's so interesting what you can tell about Beckmann from his portraits. So now he's wearing these modern American sports clothes, the kind of things that artists were wearing in America, nothing to do with Beckmann's normal way of dressing. So he's becoming one with his culture. He's standing in front of something which he's looking at with great interest. He's looking at one of his own paintings, smoking a cigarette. Behind him is a canvas which has just been prepared. And this is a very amazing painting because in 1950, when he was in New York, he was living in New York for a while, he was invited to an exhibition at the Metropolitan Gallery of Art in New York. And he was walking to that exhibition to see this portrait. He was in a collection of work, and one of the things was this portrait. And on the way, as he walked along the road, he died in Central Park of a heart attack. Can you believe? And he was 67. He was 66. He was 1 year older than me. And I look at what he's done in his life, how he's taken this darkness and said, if I can look at the world, look at the darkness in the face, and take everything I've got to create form out of it, to grow, to never give up, to work through my anguish to a place of hope, then I can do something, body of work. And I just want to read you what he said to one of his students. He said, "Friends have asked me to say something about art during this reunion. Should one embark again on a discussion of this old theme, which never arrives at any satisfactory conclusion, because everyone can speak only for himself? Who, after all, can ever escape his calling? Isn't it much nicer to go for a walk? But above all, you should love, love, love. Don't forget that every man, every tree, and every flower is an individual worth thorough study and portrayal. Art resolves through form the many paradoxes of life, and sometimes permits us to glimpse behind the dark curtain of the highest those unknown spaces where one day we shall be unified."